This chart will accelerate your law firm growth. Episode 141. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, Moshe Amsel, and I welcome you to another solo episode. We're here twice a week, doing a solo episode on Tuesdays and a guest interview on Thursdays. We've got a great guest lineup coming up. I hope that you've been enjoying when we fill the gaps with a best of replay of one of our favorite shows, both a favorite from our perspective and also from yours. You guys vote by the ones that you listen to, the downloads. So those numbers don't lie. We look at the metrics and we say, okay, this was a very popular topic. Let's bring it back for for our new subscribers. And for our old subscribers, a good review is always fun. Obviously, if you don't need to hear it again, you just skip it. But we're trying to do those sparsely, but still throw them in, pepper them in. I think that it's helped. I know from my own listening experience on shows that I tune into that's been helpful for me when they throw in an oldie but goodie kind of show. So anyway, we're going to get right to the topic. And we titled this episode with a bit of a cliffhanger teaser, not really telling you what chart we're talking about. And the reason I did that is simply because, well, I want you to tune in and listen to it, but I'm not going to make you listen till the end to give you the topic of discussion. I'm a big fan of the book Traction by Gino Wickman. As a matter of fact, when a new law firm joins our 90-day law firm turnaround group coaching program, which, by the way, if you think that you could use some help with growing your law firm and you want to cut to the chase, you want to short circuit the process, you want to save yourself time, you can avoid making a lot of the mistakes that you're going to make along the way by just going to our 90-day law firm turnaround group coaching program. It helps you get really, really clear on where you're headed, get rid of your own silly things that are stopping you, getting in your way of succeeding, and really help you focus on what's important and stick to what's important. So if that sounds like something that's of interest to you, the only way to do that is through an application process. You book a free coaching call with me, and we go through and spend 90 minutes together. And if you're a good fit, if you're in the right place and it makes sense, then you're offered a spot. So if you want to book a free coaching session, you can go to profitwithlaw.com/free coaching, profitwithlaw.com/free coaching. You'll get a calendar access there to book yourself on my calendar, and you'll also be asked a series of questions that we need filled out in order to hold your spot. Anyway, where was I going with this? So I have this 90-day law firm turnaround group coaching program. When somebody joins the program, we send them 3 books. And one of the books that we send them is Traction by Gino Wickman. Some of you may not have read the book, but may be familiar with his system called the EOS system. So in his book Traction, in chapter 4, he talks about having the right people in the organization. And I firmly believe that this is a critical focus for you as a law firm owner to get this right, to understand the concepts behind it, and to actually execute on it in your own firm. Now, I'm going to give you the cliff notes of that chapter in this episode. We're going to talk about what's important, why it's important, and how to go about doing it. But if you want visual aids with it, if you want to hear it from Gino himself, definitely go pick up a book, and we'll link up to that in the show notes. I think it's profitwithlaw.com/traction or traction book. So it's probably traction book, but we'll link that up in the show notes. My team will put the right link in for you. So definitely go pick up a copy of Traction, read it through. It'll be a game changer for you. But we're going to focus on people. And this leads us to, what chart am I talking about? Well, we're going to talk about what he calls the accountability chart. And the accountability chart kind of looks like an organizational chart, except it's a little bit different. And the idea behind the accountability chart is both for you as the owner, as well as for your employees or even any contractors that you bring on, for you to be able to show them where their chain of command lies, where they lie in your organization, what their roles are, and therefore, what are they responsible for? And what is really cool, and I'm doing this now with my team, is you can share the accountability chart with your team, and you can ask people, where do you believe that you sit right now? Which seats do you believe you occupy right now on this chart? And which ones are the ones that you would like to occupy if given the opportunity or if given the choice? And that's a very telling exercise, because it helps you identify where somebody would prefer to be spending their time. Now, it could be that they want the ones that they have and they want more, or it could be that they want something different, or it could be that they're perfectly aligned with what they want, but you'll never know if you don't ask them. So I think it's a great opportunity, if you go through this exercise of creating this chart, to then use it for your existing team, besides for the new team that you're bringing on. Now, why is what he calls the right seat? Why is the right seat so important? Well, if you think about it, if somebody is working for you and they're not aligned with your vision, your mission, where you're going, or they don't like what they're doing, or they feel overwhelmed, unheard, anything like that, if there is that type of tension, they're not going to be productive. And if they're not productive, then they're going to be a bottleneck, or there will be a bottleneck in your business with the job and function that they're supposed to be doing. Now, what's even worse is if you're not clear on what that chart looks like. Now, even if you haven't written it on paper, you may be clear in your head, which is great, but many people are not. And you just hire somebody, they're your first hire, so you just kind of start throwing things at them, and you just keep throwing things at them until they can't take any more. Things are getting dropped, things are not getting done, and then you say, I need to hire somebody else, and then you start throwing things at them. Now, if you're doing that, there's no clear delineation of who's responsible for what, and you yourself are confused about what each of these people are responsible to do. So how can you hold somebody to task? How can you check on somebody to see if they're achieving what they're supposed to be doing if you're not even clear on that yourself? So the first thing that you need to do is you need to really focus and sit down and figure out, where do people lie? Where do I need these critical functions to be addressed? So the accountability chart starts with dividing your law firm into 3 areas. The first area is sales and marketing. The second area is operations, and the third area is finance and administration. Now, before you jump down my throat and say, wait, there's more areas, or we don't call it that, you can call it whatever you want. For example, sales and marketing, often referred to as the growth team or intake, things like that. Operations could be anything. Service delivery, lawyering, whatever you want to call it. It's basically delivering the product that you're selling, right? And then finance and administration is your anybody who's placing orders for you, managing the books, controlling the inflow and outflow of money, so collections, making sure that money's coming in, and then controlling expenses, watching and making sure that not too much is going out. Now, one of the things you might be questioning is, okay, which of these three divisions or areas of the business is the most important? And I'm going to make the case for the fact that they're all three equally important. And once you recognize that all three of them are equally important, you're going to start to recognize why it's so important to create this accountability chart and to really map this out. Because when you start your law firm, you are wearing all the hats. You are the sales and marketing team. You are the operational team. You are the finance and administration team. And we're going to also talk about a visionary and integrator. You are the visionary. You are the integrator. You're everything. So once you start to farm those pieces out, you start to bring on help to do the other things, it's important to start to figure out, where do you fit in this puzzle? And one of the things that holds people back from their growth is their own ego, not being willing to let go of some of these functions. And you'll be surprised that once you put this down on paper, once you actually create this chart, it's going to be a lot easier to take something and delegate it to somebody else, because you're going to visually see what your business looks like when you do that. And it's going to be a relief rather than a blow to your ego. So when we're talking about these three divisions, let's say that you just have a strong sales and marketing team, and you have a strong finance and administration team, and you have weak operations. Well, what's going to happen is that the sales and marketing team is bringing in the new clients. The finance and administration team is keeping costs down, and they're making sure that money is getting collected, so the business looks healthy. However, if the operations team is doing a poor job, then you're not going to be able to retain any clients, which means that the finance and the sales and marketing team needs to continue working on overdrive to try to bring that business in. And you just literally can't keep a client because the operational team sucks, right? So that can't be a good situation. The next scenario is your sales and marketing team is no good. Your operations team is great. Your finance and administration team is great. Well, in that scenario, and that's even more obvious, you're going to have a bunch of really talented, great people on your team waiting for something to happen, and nothing happens. So essentially, the business just isn't coming. And if the business isn't coming, then the operations people are not going to have any work to do. So they might be great at what they do, but if they don't have work to do, they have no way of demonstrating that. They have no way of creating that goodwill for you and bringing in more clients from the fact that they served those clients well. Also, they won't stick around very long, and you won't be able to keep them around very long if the sales and marketing team is not doing a good job of bringing in new clients. The third scenario is sales and marketing team is really strong, operations is really strong, finance and administration is your weakest link. Well, in that case, there's two scenarios where I can highlight how important the finance and administration team is and how you really can't survive without them. Well, the first is we bring in plenty of new clients. We serve them to the best of our ability. We serve them great. Everyone's happy. However, the expenses, there's no control over those. So we could bring in 10 million and we can spend 10 million. We could bring in 5 million, we could spend 5 million. Or worse, we could bring in 5 million and spend 5.5. So without being able to keep a lid on operations, all the great work of the two other teams, the sales and marketing and the operations, is for naught because there's nothing to show for it at the end of the day. The other scenario is they might be keeping costs in check, but they're not collecting funds. So you're doing a bunch of work, you're getting the clients, you're making the sales, you're doing the work, but then nobody's making sure that you get paid, and there isn't enough revenue coming in to support the business. So you can see that each of these three areas are critical for the success of your law firm. And the next the concept to understand is that there's somebody that needs to manage all of these different areas of the business. There's somebody that needs to put it all together and make sure that the teams are communicating with each other and that everyone is pulling for a greater good. And that role he defines as the integrator. Love the terminology, so no reason to change it. So essentially, the integrator would be your chief operations officer, or your maybe even your CEO. Could be your CFO, but your CFO would probably be at the top of the finance. Your COO would be at the top of operations. Your CMO or I don't know what the C letter is for sales, CSO, who knows? That would be at the top of your sales and marketing, your operations, and your finance. Essentially, the integrator is the person who is above all of those. Now, the reason why I'm hesitant to call the integrator the CEO is because there's another role above the integrator. So the integrator is basically the person that's going to make sure that all the projects are running smoothly, that the different parties are talking to each other, and therefore sales and marketing knows what's going on in the rest of the business. Operations knows what's going on in sales and marketing. Finance knows what's going on in sales and marketing. They all overlap, interact with each other, and somebody's got to stay on top of the overall business to make sure that that's all running. Now, there also is a function of the person who's the brains of the organization. They've got the big ideas. Entrepreneurs, business owners are usually in that role. It's called a visionary. And, you're in that role when you've got ideas coming to you a mile a minute. You take a shower, and by the time you leave the shower, you've got, 10 ideas that you thought of. Now, a lot of the ideas that you think of are crap, right? A lot of them are just not worth anything. But every once in a while, you have an idea that you think of that's a great idea, and it really is how the business grows. So without somebody thinking of these new ideas, thinking how to innovate, thinking how to take the law firm to the next step, you kind of are setting yourself up for stagnation or worse, shrinkage. So we don't want to be there. We want to be in growth mode. We want to always be, even if you're growing to stay the same kind of, so to speak. Like if you're happy with where you're at, you still need to grow in order to maintain the current. One of the best ways to look at that is look at the value of the dollar and look at inflation, right? Inflation is this like concept of where, over time, the value of the dollar decreases. So if you just put $1,000 under your mattress today, and then you wait 20 years, that $1,000 will be able to buy you a lot less than it was able to buy you today because you stuck it under your mattress and never changed in value. So that's the same idea that I'm trying to demonstrate there. So the accountability chart, the way that it's laid out is each role is a function. Each of the titles is a function, and when we break it down into sales and marketing, operations, and finance and administration, those are the divisions, so to speak. But then beneath those, there might be frontline managers that are broken out even further. So, for example, sales and marketing are often split into two. You might have somebody who's in charge of sales. You might have somebody else who's in charge of marketing, or you have them combined. So it really depends on the size of your firm and the number of personnel that you have. Same thing in operations, right? It could be that you have one person in charge of the entire operations division, or you have it split up amongst different sections of operations. Finance and administration could be all under one umbrella, or you could be breaking out, your accounting department, your your HR department, your IT department, all under that umbrella. It all falls under that same umbrella. So now you're mapping out the accountability chart. You have the visionary at the top, integrator below it. Then you've got your 3 divisions. And then beneath your 3 divisions, you have your first level of management function. And then beneath each of those, think of like a family tree or something, or what an org chart looks like. Think of the structure of an org chart. Then you just continue down the line of all the different functions in your business. Now, what's different about an org chart and an accountability chart is two things. One, in an accountability chart, you're putting a box for every single function, even if you don't have a person in that function right now, or you have one person doing multiple functions. Okay, so for example, let's say I've got somebody on my staff who's both my executive assistant and also my social media manager. Well, those are two distinct roles that I've combined into one person doing them. That would be two separate boxes on my accountability chart, and then that person would just be the person sitting in that seat, right? That would be so they would get their name entered into two of the boxes on my chart. The other thing that makes it different is that there's three distinct things that go into the box. There's the function, the name of the person, and the top 5 roles that they're responsible for in that function. So unlike an org chart where it's literally just their name within an organizational structure, here, by looking at the chart, somebody can easily tell what they're responsible for and what the chain of command is. In other words, the manager above them now knows that not only does this person report to me, but this person reports to me, and these are the functions that they have. These are the roles that they have. And it now gives me a way to make them accountable and be able to measure how they're doing. So the accountability chart, the format of it, the structure of it, I think I articulated well through painting the picture here. I know you're just listening to me, so if you want to look at it, get the book Traction, and you can see it laid out kind of on page 98, and then there's a bunch more examples further down towards the end of the chapter where he shows you the progression of a chart over a few years. So obviously this is, you're not gonna know what your firm's gonna look like 10 years from now, but you know what you need it to look like in the next 6 to 12 months to accomplish your goals that are set for 6 to 12 months from now. So that's really important to have that mapped out so that you can grow into that vision. Now, the another concept that they go through in that book is the GWC concept, right? So basically, you need to have not only the right person who's capable of doing the job, but you also need them to have a desire to do the work, right? So that's where this GWC concept comes in. Is the whole point of this chart and the whole point of doing this exercise is to set yourself up for success. Well, you're not going to succeed if people are not happy and they're constantly quitting or they're just not being productive in their position because they're not happy with the work that they're doing. So GWC stands for get it, want it, and capacity to do it. And I love this idea because get it is just, they understand what the job entails. They understand what that position is. And that's step number one. Like if they don't get it, then they're never going to succeed in it because they don't even know what they're trying to do. So they have to understand what's expected of them. That's step number one. Step number two is they have to want it. They have to actually have a desire to do that work. If they're just doing it for a paycheck, they don't have an interest in doing it, that's going to be a recipe for disaster for you as their manager and the owner of the business that they're working in. So they have to have a desire. The desire has to be there. They have to really want to be in that position, want to do the work that's required of them. And then capacity to do it is they have to be capable of doing it, right? You can't put a non-attorney in an attorney's seat. But at the same time, you could have legal work that the attorney needs done for them by a paralegal, right? So being really clear on what is exactly the roles that this person is going to be responsible for, and making sure that the person who's being put into that spot has the capacity to actually do those roles is critical. It's really important. So we've now covered why it's so important to have somebody in the right seat? How do you figure out what those seats look like? And how do you make sure that you have the right person in that seat? Well, the last thing is to understand why this is so important, is to understand the idea of how you're going to grow, right? So what happens is you start with just yourself. You start as a solo, and at first you have to kind of navigate and figure out, okay, how do I bring in work? Okay, now I brought in work. How do I actually deliver on the work? How do I deliver on my promises? How do I execute? How do I actually do what I promised to do? And then you kind of wear the finance hat as well, right? What software do I need, and how do I implement that? How do I manage the finances in my law firm? So you go through this, at the beginning, you go through this growing stage of managing everything. But when you start, there's nothing to manage, right? Because you haven't had your first client yet, you haven't had your first dollar come in yet. But then things start to pick up and they start to grow. And hopefully you get to this point where you're overwhelmed. You're doing 100 hours a week. And hopefully you didn't wait till 100 hours a week, but I'm just painting this picture where, you're doing everything you can, but yet there's not enough time in the day for you to get to all of these different functions. And that's when you realize, hey, I need to hire somebody. So how do you know that you're ready for this? How do you know that you need to bring somebody on? And then how do you know which position to hire for? Well, that's the last step, the linchpin in this is this idea of elevating and delegating. So basically what you need to do is you need to assess which functions that you're doing, which roles you're holding that you're the least good at. And I think I've introduced this concept in another episode that I learned from Michael Hyatt about the desirability zone. So basically, somebody has, if you think of a graph with 4 quadrants, there's 4 zones they could fall into based on their proficiency level of doing something and their desire level of doing something, right? So you could either have a desire to do something but not be proficient at it. You could be proficient at something but not have a desire for it. You can neither have a desire nor be proficient at it, or you can have a desire to do something and you can be proficient at it. So obviously the best place to be is in this desire and proficiency range. You want to be in this place where I want to do this and I'm good at it. And that's kind of this concept of the get it, want it concept, right? So if you start to look at yourself and the work that you're doing, and you start to assess everything that's on your plate, obviously the first thing that you want to delegate off your plate is what falls into the non-desirable and I'm not good at it area. One of the most common things that falls in there is bookkeeping. I'm not good at it and I hate doing it, right? Most law firm owners are in that position. The good news is that you can reach out to us, just send an email to info@dreambuilderfinancial.com, and we offer bookkeeping services as part of our accounting, the accounting side of our business. We offer payroll services, we offer bookkeeping services and stuff like that. So if you're in need of a practitioner for that, feel free to just request a consult with us, and we'll see what we can, what you need and what we can hook you up with. But that being said, so that's like the best example usually, because most people are in that space where they hate doing the books and they're not good at it. Once you identified all of those areas that fall into that category, then you look at the next step is what are you really proficient at, even though you don't like doing it. That you're going to hold on to. Right, and that's gonna be the third thing that you let go of, because you want you don't want to just do something because you like doing it and you're not proficient at it, because that's just going to be a waste of your time. Better keep something you're proficient at so you can be at least be efficient with it and not have it be tying you up. So you identify all these different levels of what I'm ready to hand off to somebody else, and then I go back to my accountability chart and I say, okay, this is what this role looks like. This is the person, the type of person I need to hire. I need to hire somebody who wants to do this, who's proficient at doing this, and therefore I can hand it off to them. And that's how you can identify what exactly is the position that you're looking for. That question that people ask is, what should I hire first? Should I hire a virtual assistant? Should I hire a paralegal? Should I hire an attorney? And the answer is, there isn't a universal answer to everybody. Sure, you could bring on a virtual assistant for far less money than you could bring on an attorney. But if you are really good and really love doing all the other functions in your law firm, and you're just not interested in doing the attorney part, even though you're an attorney, right? That can happen. And if that's the case, then your first hire probably should be the attorney to do all the legal work so that you can focus on everything else that you're really enjoying doing. So that is, in a brief 30-minute explanation, what the accountability chart is and why it's so important. Now, I think it's really important to focus on what are my goals for the next 6 to 12 months, but then how do you get there? And the accountability chart is going to help you from the personnel side of it, from the responsibility side of it, because when you look at your 6 to 12 month goal, that could be overwhelming. And the last thing that we want is for you to be overwhelmed before you even start, because you're just not going to make the effort to reach that goal. You're not going to try. So creating that goal and creating the map of how you're going to get there, and then creating an accountability chart behind it, is the best way to set yourself up for success. And it's going to cut light years out of how long it takes for you to get somewhere. Because honestly, I think everybody who starts a law firm has it in them to grow the firm to wherever they want to grow it to. And I think that you would get there with enough persistence and perseverance. I think that you would get to wherever you're heading. The difference is, how long do you want it to take? Do you want it to take you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Or would you rather spend the next 40 years getting to that eventuality? And that's the difference between, following these steps and doing these things and taking these shortcuts and avoiding a lot of the pain that comes along with not doing this. So hopefully I've convinced you to check out this concept, maybe even to go ahead and do it. I know that I just did it here, and we're implementing this internally in my organization, and I would love to hear back if you go through and do the exercise, what you thought of it, whether it helped you, and how and what was your unique way that you implemented it. I'd love to hear that feedback from you. Anyway, that's it. It's a wrap. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and talk to you Thursday. Take care. Have you been enjoying the show? We sure hope so. To make sure you never miss an episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button in your podcast player app. Next week, we will be back with more valuable resources and ideas on how to break the mold and take your law firm to the next level.